Hey everyone, welcome back. Rick Garcia, G12 Communications, Rob and Jaron along with us here. We're going to kick off this day 2 video, and this is going to be, we left off the last video knowing what was required from a licensing perspective. And so now as an organization, you've got some licensing figured out. You know the components that you need to acquire. You've added the right SKUs to your system, and now you're ready to kick things off. Jaron, you're the principal architect here. When I want to add voice services to a user that I've got in my O365 environment and in Teams, how do I kick things off to move this forward and add Teams or add calling to my organization?
That's a fantastic question. So we set up a little scenario here so that we can walk through that. What we have here is our brand new user just created, Brittany Bowen, who we've just given the Office 365 E5 license to. So this user has the Teams plan and the phone system license associated with her account. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over into the Teams admin portal, and we should be able to take a look at the Teams users and find B. Bowen. And we can see that she does exist as a Teams user. She's got her username, but she's missing a phone number. Obviously, that's a crucial portion of pieces that a user needs to make phone calls. And so what we can do is, in this case, we're going to have to go into PowerShell and add a on-prem line URI, a value for that phone number there. So we'll jump into PowerShell here.
And obviously what I've just realized is that she's got an E5 license, so that she's starting off at the very top. She's got the biggest license that Microsoft offers. No need to add a SKU for the phone system component. That's already built into her licensing, correct?
That's correct.
Just from my local PowerShell here, I've connected into Microsoft Teams using the Microsoft Teams module and connected using the new CS online session. And so we'll just paste this in here. The commandlet is set-cs user. For the identity, we're identifying bbowen at compunetdemo.com. For the on-prem line URI, we're going to indicate the phone number 206-555-4902. And we're going to enterprise voice enable. We're going to set that to true, and we're going to set the hosted voicemail to true. So that's going to turn on essentially the phone system, tie that on-prem line URI phone number to this account.
Got it. And with the plus in there, is that E164 compliant essentially for international calling as well?
That's correct. Yes. Teams wants you to identify the phone numbers in E.164 standard.
Real quick point of clarification on the on-prem line URI. So in Microsoft terms, direct routing is more of a premise-based concept. So you have a cloud number or you have a premise number. Now, in the scenario we're talking about, you're still in the cloud. G12 is providing this as a service. So you are using the on-prem line URI switch, but still understand that that phone number is going to exist in the cloud as you move forward. It'll be in the G12 cloud.
Got it. So it actually says on-prem line. That's okay, very good.
We're going to take a peek at our user and see if those changes have been replicated. There we go.
Look at that.
Now our user has a telephone number.
Is there a phone number bank within Microsoft Teams where you keep extra phone numbers or a list of available phone numbers? Is there a bank of phone numbers available in Microsoft Teams?
Yeah, so within the Teams admin portal here, if we go down to the voice section here, we can take a peek at the phone numbers. This is going to show phone numbers that you are leasing from Microsoft. And there's two different types here. There's a user phone number. You can see the number type over here, user phone number, and a service phone number. So aptly named, the user numbers that you're going to associate with cloud voice calling users. So if you're leasing those numbers from Microsoft and tying them to your users there. The service numbers you're going to tie to things like call queues or auto attendance. All right, so if we take a look at Brittany Bowen, we're just looking at her general user information here. We can see that the assigned phone number here is indicated. We can also take a look at some of the voice settings for this user. Group call pickup if she wants to participate in picking up calls with other users. We can indicate those users together.
Would that be when a call comes into? Is it when a call comes into her DID? Other people can then pick it up, and you identify those other people, or is it that she can pick up other people's phone numbers when they're ringing? Is that something? Is that what you're talking about?
It's that second option there. So it would be other people that can answer the call if she's being dialed from someone else.
Got it. Very good.
And then call delegation. This would be your typical boss admin scenario. If you want to give her permissions to someone else's team's numbers or team's calling, or vice versa, if someone else were to be in that scenario with her and want to answer calls for her on a one-to-one basis. Other pieces that are important here are the policies. There's, as you can see, there's a handful of different policies in here. Everything down from meeting to messaging, live events. This is going to span kind of the broad range of Teams policies. Some of these are going to be voice-specific policies, and the one that we might care about the most in this discussion here might be the voice routing policy. And so when we're talking about direct routing and how we get users to make phone calls from their Teams client and send that phone call out to G12 and out to the PSTN, there's kind of a logical order on how that sits. And so you have a user that gets assigned to a voice routing policy. The voice routing policy sits in almost a logical bucket. It's called a PSTN usage. And within the PSTN usage, you can identify voice routes. And those voice routes are tied to session border controllers within the Microsoft phone system. That session border controller is the piece that ties into G12's environment in their system. And that tied together there is called direct routing. And it's a SIP trunk that gets created between Microsoft's phone system, their SBCs, session border controllers, and G12's session border controllers.
Got it. So you set that at the user level. So at the user level, or sorry, it's the voice policy or organization wide. So is that so that I can see that could be built into a user automatically if you're using a calling policy or a global organization wide voice policy? There it is.
Yeah. So Teams gives you the ability to create multiple layers of policy. So in this instance here, we've got the global or org-wide default policies. So this is essentially the inherited policy. And what that means is that with a lack of any other policy, this is the policy that any user in the organization is going to inherit.
Got it.
If there's no other more specific policy. If we go into this, we can see we can add a PSTN usage to this. And we're going to select the PSTN usage. This is really just like a logical bucket, right? So PSTN calling usage, and we'll go ahead and hit apply. Now we're tying the voice routing policy, which is how we tie the user to the PSTN usage. And then if we go into the direct routing piece here, we can take a look. This is our SBC that we have halfway set up for this process here. We've got the SBC set up and we've got a voice route that we can tie into this. And we can take a look and see the voice route here. We click on this and enter this in here. We can see that we have tied this voice route into the PSTN usage called PSTN calling usage. And so logically what that's doing is taking the direct routing and tying it to the user by way of those three pieces there, the voice route that ties into the PSTN usage and the PSTN usage tying into the voice routing policy. And if it seems complex for this scenario here, because we've set up just a simple scenario, but in larger organizations, this gives you flexibility of creating more specific policies for different types of users. And this becomes more relevant when you have perhaps different sites with different PSTN connections or different regional connections out in different areas of the world. And so these logical groupings work together to basically give you flexibility as an admin to build your voice routing the way that it's best, essentially.
Got it. I can see that. Is this where, and we've experienced organizations that have come from Microsoft's direct routing or Microsoft's sort of native PSTN and said, hey, we want to migrate away from that to a G12 infrastructure. So it seems like this is where they would say, I'm currently using the Microsoft native infrastructure, and now I'm going to move to a newly added PSTN calling route or SBC in that G12 and select which direct routing environment they want to pop into.
Yeah, and so just again going to if you're talking about how you would enact that change, that would again happen kind of at the top of the chain, the voice routing policy. You can work your way down through that chain and start changing the way that calls are moving for or egressing the environment for different users. And so to move yourself from Microsoft's cloud calling service into direct routing with G12, you would effectively build out your direct routing path, again with the SVC, the voice route, PSTN usage, and the voice routing policy. And essentially you're kind of cutting over from it within the voice routing policy from one PSTN usage to another.
So then let me ask this question then. If I'm migrating services from Microsoft PSTN to G12 direct routing, is it a change in every user, or is it just at the top? And when I talk about voice routing policies at the very top, and I can impact everyone else when I change the policy to select G12? The reason I ask is very specific, because everyone knows when you port numbers over from one carrier to another, everyone's question is there downtime? And so am I impacting my organization by moving from Teams, from voice native Microsoft calling to G12 direct routing?
Yeah, I think I've seen in my history with number porting and migrations, it depends a lot on the scenario. Honestly, I think that depending on the amount of numbers that you're porting, if you're going to move them from Microsoft's service into G12 service, and Rick, maybe you can clarify this, but typically there's maybe some restrictions around how many numbers you can move. Do you have to move the whole set of numbers, that type of thing? And honestly, I think that's the biggest restriction there. So I'll say, just for a scenario where if you're going to peel off a single DID and pull that away and port that from Microsoft down to G12, you can create a path within this voice routing policy, the PSTN usages, the voice route, and the SVC. You can build that path so that you're really only moving or migrating one user at a time, or you in bigger groups, or you can do it all at once. And so I think the restriction is really just based around your number porting and where you can accomplish that.
We're a big fan of moving everything over at once. We've moved up to 20,000 numbers for organizations at one time in under 5 minutes. So we're a big fan of migrating everything at one time. It's much easier from a migration perspective. It certainly has less of a chance for any errors and time delays and things like that. So we certainly move numbers all at once. Okay, let me ask you, Jaron, anything from a user perspective that we need to dive into here?
There's a number of policies where you can go in and create kind of the custom experience based on either typically the user type or the workflow type. We don't necessarily have to go into those today, but for kind of an honorable mention, we can go in and develop policies around the dial plan or how their typical dialing happens, right? If they're dialing extensions or if they're dialing local numbers, so we can affect the way that the dial plan gets created and apply that to either the whole set of users or specific sets of users. Other things like call park policies, setting up call park as a whole, or calling policies and caller ID policies. So again, not crucial to getting users activated with Teams and enabled for Teams direct routing, but definitely worth it on.